Yeah. All right. So we'll just do some quick intros. You guys know me, but there are two new people I'm going to introduce you to, and none of us have current pictures anywhere that I could grab. So I scrapped that. So here we go.
Okay, so my name is Sam DeJong, and I'm from Kitchener area, technically Woolwich, but nobody's heard of Woolwich. And I run Puppy Power. So the majority of our business is like puppy board and train, but we also do classes. I do some behavior consults. I've moved to mostly online for behavior consults, finding that's going pretty well. And I run a lot of Control Unleashed stuff. So for people that have done enough of the online material to know all the CU games, I do offer classes that use those CU games. So like basically a reactive dog class we run. We're doing like a trail class, using it to apply CU to the trails. And my puppy class has a lot of CU stuff in it too.
I might loop back to you and Camilla to tell a story about pattern games and emergencies in a little bit. Sam, how many dogs do you have?
So I own 5 of my own, and we usually have 3 or 4 little tiny imprinting puppies. So imprinting is puppies under 16 weeks. And then we will also board grads. So after they graduate, they can come back for boarding. Right now I have 3 of those guys. So we have... I'm over my limit, so don't tell anybody. I'm at 10 dogs right now, and I'm supposed to only have 8.
Oops. Some of them are going home soon. And so I asked that question in the context of if Sam needed to plan for an emergency, this is like the scope of dog care that she would need to plan for. So we're going to loop back to you in a minute, Sam, with your sort of perspective coming from that many dogs and sport dog, namely the sport dog kind of perspective, because it's a bit different.
Yeah.
And Camilla, your name, your business, what you do, where you're located, how many dogs you have, and yeah, let's go with that.
You're gonna have to maybe focus my answers a little bit, but
your name.
I'm Camilla. I have 2 dogs, a mini poodle and a standard poodle, and a horse, which the training actually is very similar for. If we talk training wise, I also teach children, and I find a lot of crossover there too. I contract out to a facility because I do multiple jobs. So I love just showing up and then not having to worry about the administrative stuff and teaching and then leaving. I also run my own private consults, also like Sam, online. By the way, hi Sam, it's been forever since I've seen you. And what other questions, Natasha, were there?
The other thing that you do happens to be lined up behind you.
Yeah. I write books. So if you like young adult fantasy with animals, I actually put some behavior stuff in the books as a way to kind of spread mainstream media and positive training in books. So right now there's 4 out. So the first one is, if I can point, this one right here, Of Threads and Oceans. She has a poodle because I'm a poodle advocate, a tiger, and there's a snake on her chest right there. Those first 3 are out right now. I'm opposite now. This book here, the standalone. So if you want to start this one, you can start this one too. But my general suggested reading order is this comes out as 4. And my 5th book is coming out end of May, June.
Cool. And where are you located?
June 15th. I'm located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I know you've got some members in the States and stuff too, but yeah. So
we do have some members in the States. We have some people in Ontario. We do not have our Calgary, Alberta contingent here today. Okay. So there's a couple of us that have some overlapping natural disasters and emergencies, but the blanket statement I'm going to say, because I would like to do a follow-up session with sort of local, at least local to me, fire authority people, emergency people, but the answer is always going to be the same. And I said this in our level up class the other week. Their rule is you get yourself out first, right? Like that's the focus. You get the humans out of the house first. But Robin, where are you, Robin? Thank you, Camilla. Robin, who's not on camera right now, asked a question. There he goes. There's Robin. So Robin raised a question a couple months ago based on an experience that he had with having a very serious house fire just like 4 houses down from them, and started thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, started thinking that you might have to evacuate you and your dogs.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was, we could see it from across our backyard and we could smell it. The smell was on the dogs, and it was just us trying to prioritize what to take, how to get the dogs out. And we were just in a weird standby mode.
Yeah. So we thought, he's like, can we have a conversation? It's like, here is the conversation. Ideally, there's a follow-up conversation. So with me running around like a chicken with my head cut off, I didn't get as far into planning things as I had hoped. But it's worthwhile to kind of start the conversation with some of the emergencies generally involve, if you're home, getting your pets out. But what would you need to necessarily have prepared in order to do that safely? You guys hear me talk all the time, so I'm not going to go first. I think maybe we would start with Camilla and your perspective, and then we're going to switch into Sam's perspective, because when I was talking to Sam, she was talking about the setup that she has for dogs in her car, coming from doing a lot of sports, a lot of trialing. There's setups that you have in your car that most of us do not have. And so once you've gotten your dogs out, and you should have, certain things in place to get your dogs out, you kind of have to think, if it was longer term or you had to take them somewhere, or if you couldn't necessarily shelter in place or go to a shelter, or think like what kinds of things might you need to have kind of set up for yourself. So I think that's the flow that we're going to do. I'll go last. And so I will spotlight Camilla again, and I will share my screen because you sent a lovely slide. If my mouse is going to cooperate, it's on this side.
If I knew I had more time, I'd spread that out to a couple slides, but all good.
Okay.
First of all, I feel for you, Robin. I have actually experienced something similar. I don't want to say this really out loud because I feel like it might be true, but we think there might be an arsonist in our community because we have had many fires in the community. In the 10 years that I've lived here, we've had a fire to the north, 1.4 kilometers north of us. We've had a fire. Our backyard is on like a main road. We've had a fire on the other side of the main road. And that was like violent crimes fire. And then one day I saw people behind the backyard looking up beyond my building, my house. And I was like, I wonder what they're looking at. And I went to the front door and I opened the front door to a fire truck that had planted, they have that like the posts and they plant, and they were spraying water into the house across the street from me. So not the house directly. So I look out onto like the edge of a cul-de-sac in the front of the house. So it wasn't the house in front of us was on fire, but it was the house next to it that had started the fire. And that whole house had to get rebuilt. And the house right in front of us also had to be rebuilt pretty much, because I think they had a huge hole in the roof and all the whole like back of it was gone. So I have experienced a very similar panic where it was, oh my God, if the wind blows the right way, and it's very windy where I live, we're going to have to get out of here real fast. On top of that, the fire truck was right in front of the house. And I'm like, I will have to figure it out. So I feel for you, Robin. It's not something fun, but it is something that I've thought about. Okay, so I will back it up a little bit too, and I'll start talking about if for you who don't know, in 2013, Calgary flooded. We had so much rain to the point where it was a huge natural disaster, and the river that runs in the middle of the city flooded to the point where people lost many houses, and there was a lot of evacuations and all that stuff. I was very lucky. We lived high up enough that we did not suffer any damage or really any impact besides, I think work generally was canceled for everyone who lived downtown or worked downtown, all that kind of stuff. But it did start a lot of conversation about emergency preparedness. And I did have some friends who lived really close to the river or who lived right along those edges that I learned a lot from, and they were very gracious in sharing information with me. So the quick and dirty of it version is that I had a friend who lived right along the river, and she said the thing that she learned from that experience was put anything you want stored in Rubbermaid bins. Anything in cardboard boxes was gone in storage. However, anything that was in Rubbermaid bins, totally fine, totally dry in a flood. So that was one thing. The second thing she told me about was to make lists. So she said that the firemen literally came up to her door and said, "You have an hour to pack and then get out." So she was panicking at that point, and she was like, okay, I didn't know what to pack. And she threw some things in that she was like, there were ridiculous things that she afterwards was talking about, like a statue that her grandfather had won an award, and it was like a bronze something statue. And she was trying to shove that into a bag and carry that with her. And later on, she was like, it was ridiculous. That was so heavy. There was no point to it. It was kind of sentimental, but not really sentimental. So he actually suggests that you make 2 lists. So I have 2 lists that are typed up, and I probably should update them now that I'm in this seminar, that are on the back of one of the cabinets, or you can post it on your fridge somewhere where you will remember to go look at it. So you have a list that is, you have like 5 or 10 or 15 minutes to grab stuff and get out of your house, which if you can take the time now while you are calm to think about, make that list now. Some things that I would include, especially if, are enough food for the dogs, leashes, a spare harness, spare leash, food for about a week. For you, if you've got, think of like she told me things like documents that are not necessarily impossible to replace, but are very difficult to replace. That's your passport, birth certificate, the insurance for your house, actually, the insurance for your apartment, those kinds of things that would be real pain to replace, and that would be kind of nice to have when you are recovering from all the stuff. And then to have a list for an hour, right? If you have an hour, you have a decent amount of time to load up your vehicle. So to make that list so you don't have to think about it, so you can these are the things that are going into the vehicle. And if you have an hour, she told me things that are valuable monetarily, right? That you could sell. So that you could sell in order to have money at the end of it. One thing that was mentioned a lot when I was talking to people was that to have, and I mentioned this already, have a copy of the insurance for your house or your vehicle on a cloud server somewhere. Because what happened after the flood was a lot of insurance companies were not being very honest. And they were going back on the things that they said that they would cover, or people assumed that they would cover, but they didn't have proof of what the coverage actually was. So they couldn't say what that actually was supposed to be. And so it would be valuable to have that with you on some kind of cloud server so that you can access it and it's not in your house. I also think you should set yourself up for success. So we actually store our passport, birth certificate, all those documents, not in some nice folder or file folder or drawer. I actually keep it in a backpack because my thought is if I keep it in a backpack in a very commonly area, it's easier to grab a backpack in an emergency and know that everything is in there than it is to have to throw everything into a backpack and then bring it. And it's not very convenient for me, right? When I need my passport or all those documents to have to go to the backpack and dig it out of this thing. However, I have time to do that in a time when I am grabbing those documents, and I don't have as much time to do that when, there's an emergency going on. The other thing I like to bring to attention is, I live in a 2-story house, and if I'm in the bedroom and and there's a fire, how am I going to get all of our occupants safely to the ground? I actually have a ladder that I can throw over the side, and that's right by the window. So setting yourself up for success. I also have a duffel bag. So at one point I did have 2 small dogs and 1 large dog. So my plan was to shove both small dogs into a duffel bag. It was a large duffel bag, and put that across my body and then go down the ladder. But I also could, what are you going to do with a large dog, right? You can't shove them into a duffel bag, or it has to be a very large duffel bag. But they do make emergency dog evacuation harnesses. So that's the picture up on the screen. That's directly from Fido Protection, which is the company that makes them. I think when I was Googling this earlier today, there are other ones now. What I like about this one is it can go along the back. The one I saw on Rough Wear was, I think, one on your front. I don't know if it can go on your back as well. But if you think about having to put your dog on you in order to get down a ladder, you need both of your hands, right? So that's why I thought something like a harness like that. And I know I could wear, if I needed to, all the dog harnesses and duffel bags and climb down a ladder if need be. So, and then I just threw on first aid kit because, I thought that was pretty standard too. But yes, that is the extent of my emergency preparedness for the house. Another thing I don't think I mentioned was one thing that my friend told me was to make sure you have 3 to 5 days of clothing if you have like an hour to pack, because 1 or 2 days is not quite enough, but 3 to 5 is enough, because generally in those emergency situations, people like Red Cross and stuff will set up laundry machines and you'll have enough clothes that you can kind of cycle through them. But 3 to 5 days is kind of what she said to kind of be prepared for as far as like your personal stuff too. So yeah, that's what I've got for you. I hope it's helpful. Yeah.
Thank you. There's a lot of information there, things that like we don't necessarily think about. Like I'll talk about sort of the stuff that I have set up that's kind of similar, but as you're talking, there's definitely some gaps in my plan that I need to think about a little bit. The carriers, they do sell a variety of them, and if people are going to have them for emergencies, like with anything and with any training, you definitely want to practice putting your dog in it, and it's not the easiest thing. It's not.
No, it's a bit complicated. Like there's all kinds of straps and stuff. So definitely practice, because I mean it's nice because it comes in this tiny little packet. So if you're going to bring it, I think the original purpose was like if you were hiking in the mountains and your dog got hurt, how are you going to bring it down? So it comes in a nice little pack. However, you definitely take it out because there's a lot of weird straps, and they do help you with like this is the front and this is the back. But as with everything, you want to practice to make sure that under pressure.
And then you got to practice. Adrenaline will have you going, but you still have to get it around and your dog used to lifting up. Now, Carmen, who's on screen, just give a little wave. Carmen has dogs that will not fit in one of these things, so we'd have to kind of. She has a Great Dane and a Doodle giant.
I don't know. I would look at the website because they had like lots of different sizes, and they had sizes for very large dogs. So I just
looked. They had them up to 160 pounds.
Oh,
so there's some practice going on there. You need to practice a little bit.
Yeah,
right. At the end, I've pulled up some links, and I felt there was no point in replicating a list that like official sites have actually put together. So we'll just kind of pull those up, and then I'll send the links out to people so you can kind of start to build your own. Thought it was maybe irresponsible for me to try and put the list together. I'm just like, these get updated regularly. Go here. Thank you, Cam. So you got out of your house, you've got your stuff all set up, you're rushing to your car. And Sam, that's not to say you can't talk about everything else you've got going on, but let's talk about what's in your house, multiple dogs, and then you get your dogs into the car, what you have set up there. You're on mute, my love.
There we go. Okay. I don't have a fancy slide. I just have my notes, which I'll be just kind of reading from. So I am not nearly as organized as Camilla, but as luck would have it, I think I would probably do pretty well in emergency. So I'm just going to go through some of the things I already have in place. I will say that where I am, really the most typical kind of emergency we're going to see is a power outage. So just making sure that we always do have extra water on hand, because we are on a well. So if power goes out, we don't have water. We have a generator also. So if it was going to be out long enough that we were going to run out of water, we do have a generator so we could get our well going and keep the dogs hydrated that way. Generally, we have quite a few extra food bags on hand, and worst case scenario, if we ran out of somebody's food, we would have extra of somebody else's food to hold us over if the stores actually ended up closed and we couldn't go buy dog food. And I do also have paper copies of most of the dogs here vaccines. The majority of people email things, but a lot of my clients also give me paper copies. Listening to Camilla, I'm thinking I should have paper copies of everybody's just in case, because you never know if you can't get into your email or if something happens. Another possible thing that would happen here is a house fire. So knowing where all my exits are and the best ways to take the dogs out of the house. The way that I'm set up, every exit from my house, aside from my front door, has a separate yard where we could let the dogs all outside of the house while we get hold of owners that are close enough to come and get their dogs or make alternative arrangements. So really my go-to is get the dogs in the car. But realistically, I don't have enough space in my car to put all the dogs that we have at any one time. So chances are if the house was on fire, a lot of dogs would be hanging out in the backyard, which hopefully would be far enough away. The other thing is the entire property is fenced. It's 32 acres. So absolute worst case scenario, if we had to get far enough away from the house that being in the yards wasn't safe, we could let everybody out into that area and close that front door or front gate. So as far as the car,
let's pretend now that you just have your pet dogs and you're putting them in the car. So let's just choose your pet dogs and then what you've got set up in your car.
Yeah. So for my car, like I have enough room between my two cars to cover my own dogs and my imprinting dogs. So really it would just be the additional boarding dogs that I would have to worry about. So for my regular car, as far as taking the border collies with me, like this is stuff that I have for them. And it's not because of an emergency. It's just because we live on the road a lot. We do shows, we do competitions. So I've got a lot of stuff in my car for them. And a lot of that stuff could double for the other dogs too, if we had to throw some extra dogs. And really, like, I'm not against throwing 2-3 dogs in a crate if I really had to in a pinch. A lot of them would get along with each other and be able to do that. So I think I probably could get most dogs into the crate in the car if I needed to. So my one car, I've got 2 intermediate crates. Intermediate would fit like probably a small lab and smaller. So I usually put a border collie in each intermediate crate. And then I've got in my other car, 2 mid-sized crates. And I usually have some wire crates collapsed in there too, just in case I have to pop one up in an emergency. So sometimes if I double dogs up and I get on the road and they start fighting with each other, we have to pop up a metal crate and separate. And that also is super helpful if you end up having to go into a hotel. So having crates that are collapsed in your car, if your dog isn't really used to being left in the car or being left in a hotel, it's a really good idea to be able to have a crate in your car and a crate in hotel so you can take it one dog at a time and bring them into the hotel. So having an extra crate allows you to bring a dog into the hotel, that empties out a crate, you bring that crate into the hotel, then bring a dog in, and so on and so on. So extra crates is super useful in a hotel situation. I don't know how many of you guys have like either in your trunk or if you guys have SUVs, there's always like a little compartment underneath of the trunk, right? Where you can put stuff. So I always have in there extra kibble. It could expire. It's a good idea to check, but usually it doesn't because I usually do use it up fast enough. I've got extra bags of treats in there. And that's come in handy when I've found stray dogs on the road many, many times. I've been the hero and showed up with treats and been able to get dogs because I always have extra bags of treats in my car. Water jug and collapsible bowls. So when we're thinking about emergencies, like obviously all of these things take up space. So the more things that you have that are collapsible to decrease how much space it takes up, the better. In my glove compartment, I've got copies of my own dog's vaccines because we do cross the border a lot. So they ask for it. So we already have that ready. I also, in my glove compartment, have Serenia and metronidazole because you never know when you're going to need that shit. I have long lines and extra leashes in that car. I think a lot of dog people have those. but definitely useful to have in an emergency. Another thing that I have it in there because I'm forgetful, but it would be very helpful if there was an emergency and I forgot my wallet, is I always have an extra credit card in my car. Most of the stuff that you might not be able to grab out of your car, you probably could buy. But if you left your wallet in your house and it was on fire, you're not going to have any cash. I usually have just $20 because I know it happened, 2 summers ago or 3 summers ago? A lot of the payment things went down and people were forced to have to use cash, right? So having some cash in your car, yeah, there's a chance it could get stolen if somebody broke into your car, but $20 I can afford to lose if need be. So I do usually have $20 just in case I get somewhere and they don't take cards or something's down. Good idea to have. I also had some extra crates in my garage that I could grab possibly if the power wasn't out and the garage door would open. If that part of the house wasn't on fire, if it was a house fire. Another thing that most dog sport people have that a lot of pet people don't have is there's these info tubes that you can get that you stick on the side of the crate and you fold up the paper and put instructions inside. So you put your emergency information on there because if God forbid something happens to you and the dogs are in the crate, having those little information tubes could be super helpful for whoever ends up finding and rescuing your dogs. So your vet information, food instructions, and how to handle the dog. And if they're on any meds, you could also include that instruction. And obviously any dogs on meds that are life or death, you would make sure to have backup of that in your car. And then the last little piece I have here is where would I go? Ideally, my parents' place would be an option. We do have a lot of extra stuff at their house if we had to crash there. But I'm pretty well versed in dealing with pet-friendly hotels, so that would be an option too. One thing to consider if you were to have to go to a pet-friendly hotel is some of them only allow 1 dog. So having an idea of what hotels are out there that accept multiple dogs is a good idea to have in mind. I know Super 8 motels are generally pet friendly and usually pretty good about having multiple dogs. There is often an extra fee for either extra dogs, or sometimes it'll be like dogs under 25 pounds are free and dogs over that cost extra. But just kind of having an idea of what's out there, because if you don't travel with your dogs a lot, you probably have never really thought about what hotels are pet friendly and what pet policies and stuff look like. And that is it.
That was really awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to fill in. There's a lot of stuff that both of them have mentioned that I have set up as well. And then there's a couple of extra things. And there was a couple of comments in one of our Facebook threads that had some interesting things I thought were handy. So Laurel, who owns Wheaties and is in BC, where there's obviously a lot of wildfires, she keeps leashes and collars on her bedside table because her dogs are in their bedroom. And if you had a house on fire or had to evacuate and couldn't get to your front door or back door where most of us keep our stuff, she would have it right there in case she had to go out a different exit. So that was super handy. The tube things, very cool. And the backup medic, like having all that information, the person who makes, I think they're literally called those tube things. And she's in Canada. She makes them in Canada. You could attach them to the crates, but you could attach them to just about anything else. You can get them customized with your dog's name. And there's enough room in there for like some backup medication, ID, extra leash, extra collar, and their papers, which is super handy. For Logan, I have 2 phone number, like I have his regular tags, but then I had those engraved like silent tags, and it's got 2 other people's phone numbers on it. Because where we are, sometimes the cell service is not great. So if you couldn't get to me, maybe if you can't get to Tim, there's somebody else. And I put those on all the dogs that come and stay with us too. And some of them go home with them because they didn't have any ID on them at all. Like I have a client who still hasn't put ID on her dog, but my number's on there. So that's good. Extra water, for sure. Extra food. And in a pinch, there's just some things. There's a lot of dog owners, and honestly, myself, I used to be one of them, where a lot of dog owners are sort of a purist about what kind of food your dog eats, right? My previous dog would eat anything at all, so it didn't matter. With Logan, as we know, he doesn't eat everything, but even if you're not typically always feeding kibble to your dogs, it's worthwhile, and I've learned this from somebody else, in having your dog have a kibble meal once in a while. So in an emergency, if you have to feed them food that they're not used to, you're not always dealing with like cannon butt diarrhea while you've had to evacuate and you're in a shelter or somewhere, right? So there's that kind of emergency preparedness for your dogs as well. Crate training, even if you never crate train, like even if you never crate your dog at home alone, having them used to being confined in a crate. If you had to go to a hotel, they have to go to the vet or they have to go to the room or they're going to be in a crate. If you have to go to a shelter that accepts dogs, extra handy if you could have them in a crate. And Camilla sent a message to me saying that one of our friends just had to rescue some poodle from a car accident a couple of weeks ago. And the firefighters had mentioned that it was helpful to have the dogs in crates so they could pick them up and move them really quickly without having to worry about manhandling a dog, let alone manhandling a dog that is panicked or potentially, would be injured. So having your dogs being comfortable being in a crate is just, it's a good life skill, even if you never do it at home. Logan is never crated at home. And it actually occurred to me, he hasn't been in a crate in probably 8 months. And so it's on my list next week to have him practice just kind of being in there. Right. So he's used to that. Muzzles. If you have a dog that muzzle training is a life skill. It's just, I think all three of us as trainers, muzzle training as a life skill is a good skill to teach your dogs, even if you never use it. But in an emergency, or if you have an injured dog, they're gonna bite you. So having them used to just wearing one in general is super good. And then having one of those in your car. You don't want an emergency responder to be the person that slaps the muzzle on your dog for the first time. That's not going to go so well. Backup food, backup treats, backup water for sure. And I have that here too, because if the power goes out, we also have no water.
I forgot Flora. That's in the car too.
Okay. Flora with those upset tummies.
Flora and metronidazole, they go hand in hand
together. And for those of you who have not been lucky enough to have to use metronidazole, it's when your dog has one. Your first aid kit for people obviously will usually double fine for dogs. Business-wise, I have both in my car and my house, and for business. Yeah, we can type out those medicines that we're talking about. What was the thing I was gonna say? I forget now. Long lines. You already said. Sam said long lines. I was gonna say something else. If you are, if you're having to evacuate and you live with more than one person, but you're not together, and there's potentially no cell service because everyone's trying to call everybody during an emergency, where would you meet? And you might not be able to do that right away. So thinking through that plan, for me having to leave here, if there was a fire or tornado or storm, there's often tornado warnings that come on the radio, and I am not comfortable with them. But thankfully they're not here. They're just slightly north of here. But when there's just, it's really not all that far. So if we were not both at home, where would you go? And you might not have a choice, right? Because I might have to go to X shelter or X place based on, whatever local authorities dictate. But if Tim is somewhere else, he might have to go somewhere else. And so if you couldn't get in touch with each other, what would be the long-term plan? 3 days out, 5 days out, what would we be trying to do, right? And again, in an emergency, you might not always be able to do those things. And you're going to be worried anyway. But if you've had this conversation, and like Camilla said, maybe it's in that backpack and in your car, in both your cars, so that, you're not having to wonder what's happening. You could pull it out and you could take a look. Vaccine certificates, which I don't have copies of on paper. I only have it on my phone in photos and notes and on the cloud, but maybe I should have it in paper. And I used to, when we used to do road trips more, it was in my glove compartment for sure. Know where your nearest veterinary emergency hospital is for anything, not even just not a fire, but like anything, know where it is. I heard very recently for the area that I'm now in, that somebody had to drive their dog to Coburg for a veterinary, and that is like a 2-hour drive. And so with that, not ideal. I've had a conversation with Logan that he is not allowed to be sick after hours or injure himself. Like we've had that chat because it would probably take me 2.5 hours in the dark with no traffic to get there. And depending on the weather, I might have to take a boat. I might not have to take the boat. It just kind of depends, right? So know where those options are, know if they're 24 hours or know if they're, what their restricted hours are. Super important. Your medication profile, your health history, your emergency contacts somewhere else other than your phone. Getting super morbid here, but I will die on this hill. If you don't have a will, get one. Right? We won't get morbid, but I have quite a few stories of people who didn't have one, but get one. And if you have pets, put provisions for them. And I don't mean financial provisions, but for your care. If that's something for their care, that's something that keeps you up at night. Don't surprise people with your pets. That tends to not go very well. But yeah, the day-to-day things is having your plan, talking to the people in your house or your family about your plan, updating those things, revisiting those things, probably yearly is a good idea. I try to time ours for business because there are dogs like Sam, there are dogs that don't belong to me that live here. What I need to do with them, where we need to go, where my team needs to be if they sometimes have dogs, but I don't. If there is emergency over there, I'd probably be the one contacting clients if their dogs are with me. So having your plan and your triage of family members or things like that would be super important. And your pet first aid, which if you're in the county close enough to me, that will be happening again. Knowing your pet first aid skills, there are things that are different than people, right? There are things that are the same, but there are quite a few things that are different that I didn't know until I took it. So having that in place is also super handy. And now we're just gonna open up the floor. Questions, thoughts, comments. If you look at the chat, guys, the medication, Sam put them in the chat. Thank you, Sam. I'm going to open up.
Can I add? I mean, I know we're not veterinarians, but there's a couple more that I generally stock in my house.
Cool. Can you put those in the chat?
On top of the ones that Sam. Yeah. I stock Medicam for pain. It's a painkiller. And I also stock, what's that cream that starts with the V? It's like Polysporin, but for dogs.
Oh, I don't have any. Right now, I'm going to look for it, but I don't have any.
I'd have to look and send a picture later because I was like, it's like a yellowish cream when it comes out. My vet was like, you can use it for people. She uses them like Polysporin on humans. Thanks, Tat. Yes, those two on top of what you said, Sam, I will always stock in my house, regardless of emergency situation or not.
So it's an antibacterial. We'll look it up and we'll share it with people. Antibacterial ointment that starts with a V. Okay, cool. We will figure out what that is. Because people are familiar with pattern games on this call, I think maybe there's only one or two of you that might not be familiar with. Both Cam and Samantha are Control Unleashed instructors for pattern games. So they're in the same group chat that I'm in, or group like the Facebook group for instructors. I'm going to get my ass back in gear and start my certification and probably bug Sam to be my mentor because I don't think I ever got assigned to you. But there is a really, really cool story, and I don't think I have the whole story, that Leslie McDevitt, who's the creator of the pattern games, got from someone who had to evacuate her horses during a fire. Do you guys know that story? Someone want to tell it other than me? Sam, do you know that story? No. Okay, Cam knows that story, so you can fill in the gap. So my understanding from just the small post, and it was something that Leslie shared with everybody, is this person had taught her horses the 1, 2, 3 game. Barn's on fire, farm's on fire, we have to evacuate the horses. And what she shared was that she used the repetitive structure that the horses knew of the 1, 2, 3 game to keep them like with her and a little bit more focused. I'm not going to say they weren't panicking, but to safely guide them down the trail. And this is all I know. So if Cam, if you know more, feel free to speak up.
Well, I do know a little bit more. I do have a horse. So horse emergency situations are very different. And it's often very difficult to get them away from the barn because that's their home, that's their safety spot. So if the barn's on fire, if there is a tornado that has ripped off the roof of a barn, which has happened before, a lot of people write on Sharpie. If they have like white hooves or something, you can write your phone number on their hooves, or attach a tag on them somehow, or just write on them if you can with a Sharpie, just some kind of way to contact you. But yes, that was the barn was on fire and they had to get out, and their house was on fire because I think it was a whole acreage.
Yeah, it was all.
And so she used the 1, 2, 3 game to get away to safety, and keep, I think it might have been 2 horses that she was leading at the same time. And so to get 2 horses to not run away or back to the barn is quite a challenge. So the 1, 2, 3 game was very useful for them. And also because I think in that post, she said the 1, 2, 3 game, because it was like just 1, 2, 3, it calmed her own mentality down because she just had to focus on this like 1, 2, 3. She didn't have to think about anything else. It was just 1, 2, 3 and to go in that direction.
It's a very cool story. Practice your 1, 2, 3 games. If they can do it with horses, you can do it with dogs, right? If you remember it. But it was very cool to kind of be able to say that she remembered that, and it was reinforcing enough for her horses to go, okay, your horses are battling their natural instinct to stay in their home, which is on fire, and follow her down out through a fire instead, using something like a pattern game, because you can't haul a horse anywhere that it doesn't want to go. It's not going to go with you, right? So to have those kinds of skills, it's very cool. Do we have questions from anybody? Things that you have in your own homes? Because certainly while we're sharing what we've done, we're not necessarily experts.
I just put in the chat, I'm not sure if it's the same cream, but is it Theraderm that you're thinking of? Okay, because that's something else you can get from the vet, and it works really well for anything from black fly bites to staph infections and any kind of irritation.
I have like a go.
It's like a corticosteroid.
Oh, you're absolutely fine.
It sounds like the same kind of thing, but I don't think that was the name. I'll have to look it up. It's in my cabinet downstairs, but
it is always by my front door. It goes, if Logan is going with me, it comes with me. If I've got dogs in the car, it comes with me. And it's just like a travel, like a toiletry case. But in it, I have the first aid things, the backup medication, bandages for myself, tick removers, extra collar, extra leashes. Is all kind of, you guys can't really see it because I've blurred my background. But it's all in here.
Oh,
it's pretty
wipes. Wipes is something else that you never realize you need until it's too late.
Extra towels, maybe, if you can throw those in your car, like in that little thing. Wipes for sure. They don't have to be necessarily like a baby, like in an emergency, baby wipes are fine. You don't have to buy the pets.
I have Lysol wipes.
Ones.
So if somebody explodes in the crate or pukes in the crate, we're good.
Yeah. In a pinch, you could wipe a cut with that or something like that, right? Too.
Yeah.
Questions from anybody? Or do you guys have stuff set up in your own homes that you want to share? Because we can all kind of learn from each other. Debbie, go ahead.
First aid kits. So I know what's in a human first aid kit. I can think for my dog, I would add a couple of rolls of that stick to itself Band-Aid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What else? What else?
Can I jump in for a second? That stick to itself tape. Here, the money saving hack for you all. go to a horse store and buy it there. It's called Vet Wrap. It's like $1. If you go online and buy like the smaller version, it's like, I've seen up to $20. But for horses, you have to use like a whole roll for a horse leg each day. So they are cheap at horse stores. Greenhawk is generally a pretty well-known horse store. I call it like the superstore of horse stores across Canada. Go get Vet Wrap because it is way cheaper.
So I'm thinking I'm going to have to trade in my SUV and get an RV to fit all this crap.
Me too, Debbie. Me too.
I'm just kidding.
I don't know. Am I muted still?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. So the car I travel most in is just a Countryman. It's not a big car.
Okay.
But the other car I have is a RAV4. So like if we were at home, I would have those two cars. But the car I'm on the road most is just a Countryman. It's really not big. But that's why I say like collapsible things is key.
Yeah. I'm just imagining the size of my crate is the size of a small room. I'm thinking, but I do have a canvas collapsible crate in the garage. So I've made a note, dig that thing out, air it out and get it somewhere close.
Yeah. And the other thing too, just something to keep in mind, the size of crate that you have at home for your dogs to be in and relax in when you're not home is generally not the size of crate you want in your car for safety, because they get tossed around a whole lot in a crate that size, right? So crates that are rated for car travel, airline travel, and safety in a car are very different in their dimensions, but also in their how they're made. So like in an emergency, you can pop up a metal crate, like a metal wire crate in your car. But as far as emergency crash testing goes, that's not great to use. But just consider that if you're thinking about an emergency crate for transporting your dog, it doesn't have to be the same size as the crate that they lounge around in for 4 hours if you're not home.
Good. Okay. I was thinking also a roll of poo bags.
Yeah, well, a couple rolls of poo
I don't know
bags.
about you guys. I have a roll of poo bags in every single pocket that I own.
I was
yeah. So you can buy, and for my own just ease, you can buy pet specific first aid kit. Sure, you can also assemble your own, but they're pretty easy to buy, and they take the kind of the guesswork out of everything. So the Ontario SPCA is the screen share I have up right now. We'll include these links for everybody. But there's 72 hours. And so we're saying more than 3 days, right? So 72 hours of food supply, including a can opener. If you use canned food, don't forget the can opener. In fact, that 72 hours of water supply. For me, where I live now, which is another adjustment for me. It's like in the city, you open the tap, water, right? Yeah. Where I get my water from now, ironically, it's from the lake. And it's treated, but in an emergency that would be shut off, and then the pump wouldn't also run. So I have backup bottled water for both business and home, like jugs of bottled water. Keep them somewhere cool, not in direct sun. But I also have iodine. Don't wing this, look it up, okay? But I've used this in Indonesia and stuff. I have iodine and grapefruit seed extract to treat lake water. That's my last resort. But we have those. You can also buy those like camping water
life
filtration
straws.
Things in an emergency. Life straws, they're called. You can also buy those, but in a pinch, if you have iodine and you have grapefruit seed extract, you can clean your water enough that you could drink that for a while. Not super long, but a little while. You don't want to drink iodine treated water for a really long time, but it's, comes in a small bottle. It's not expensive. You use it for wounds and stuff too. Blankets and towels, cleaning supplies, to Steph's point, cleaning supplies, paper towels, waste bags, rubber gloves. I have rubber gloves in my car as an emergency because you never know what you might have to clean up. And if you're not near a bathroom, well, wipes might not do it. So some disposable rubber gloves are fun. Toys, leash, muzzle, harness, collar. If you have cats, extra bags of litter. Kitty litter, which also works well if you're stuck in the car in the winter and you need some direction. Bags of kitty litter work well for that. Sturdy pet carrier, we talked about that already. Your medications, your pet first aid kit, ID tags and microchip numbers. Just have them on. I know a lot of us probably take those off for our dogs at night to sleep. So just have them handy by the bed if you needed them. So I take Logan's off at the end of the night, but they're either on my bedside table or on the doorknob to the bedroom. So before he goes out at any time, it's just there. If it's on the doorknob by the bedroom, I have to turn the doorknob to get out the door. It goes on him before he goes out, even if it's like a last minute pee. A flashlight, and that's not the one that's attached to your phone because you don't want to drain your phone battery for that. Medical records, veterinarian's name, contact number. Hadn't thought of this. Current photo. Not that we have photos of our dogs at all, but maybe also on paper. So current photo of your animal with their name, their address, your unique markings, information on your animal's feeding schedule, temperament, behavior. Like I would probably add some things about Logan's temperament. Don't grab him in certain ways. Medical concerns. And then I think, Sam, you said something like boarding facilities and hotels that are within 50 kilometers, right? So having that as your list. And your emergency kit supply should be kept in a waterproof container that's easily accessible. It can be transported conveniently. Update it twice a year. I think I do mine once a year, but update it twice a year. And then restock fresh food, whatever. If you've got emergency water, you don't really want 5-year-old jugs of water, right? So you would like replace those. And the other thing that it talks about here is having your evacuation plan, obviously evacuating early, which is hard. We all have heard stories and maybe even done it ourselves where people try to hold out in their homes as long as possible because you don't want to leave your home. But evacuating early makes it so that, first responders or rescue responders don't have to also deal with you. If you were supposed to be somewhere safe. Okay. Last thing it says is take your survival kit with you. I don't know how many of us have a survival kit, but if you're making those provisions for your animals, you need to make sure you're making them for yourself too. Water, we can share. Food in an emergency, in a pinch, sure, you could do it. Maybe not for so long, right? And if you were really hungry, you could eat the kibble. Would that be your first choice? Maybe not. For me, where I am, the nearest vet, the nearest grocery store, the nearest hospital is 45 minutes or more away. If there was a blockage of the road, I can't go anywhere. So if it's not an emergency where I need to leave here or I can stay here because I can't get through the road because trees have crossed it or whatever, I can't get somewhere. It would take me a really long time to get somewhere. So this is, again, new for Tim and I living here is things to think about. And they sell them at Costco, I've discovered, is like emergency food. Okay. So do you have tuna? Do you have different things? Do you have stuff that you need to have on hand? Where did people go? Stuff to have on hand in an emergency would be rations for yourself, not including the organic cookies that we have for our dogs. You want to have your own food. So tuna, not necessarily frozen food, but like dehydrated, dried food you're going to want to have. Nearest Mickey D's. Yes. Also probably about an hour away from me.
Something that I don't think we've talked about yet, that I think, I know, Sam, Tash, I would be curious how many everyone has this in their first aid kit, is doggy Benadryl for allergic reactions. Yeah,
that's right in here. I actually checked it the other day. That's in here.
You never know.
And so that would be medications, right? Just in case.
Or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, something. Okay. Just going on to a slightly different page to see if there were some variations is what I kind of looked at. Most of them are the same, but this was sort of interesting. So food and water for 72 hours, 4 liters a day per the average dog. I don't know if they're talking about food or water, but I can tell you that my dog does not drink 4 liters of water a day. So they might mean food. But depending on the size of your dog, right? So you know how much your dog is going to eat. In an emergency, it's the bottom. So keeping your pet inside during severe weather, when storms and changes in temperature and wind can really make, some animals or most animals nervous if it's severe enough. Obviously, never leave a pet outside or tethered during a storm. So we're not tying them to something. If there's Carmen's like, why? Who would? But it's there because somebody's thinking about it, right? Separate cats and dogs. Keep smaller pets such as hamsters away from larger animals. I hadn't actually thought of that, but stress, right? Most of you were here because you were in reactive class, so thinking about like triggers and what your dog would be comfortable with if they were super stressed out. Cam?
Can I pop in for a second?
Of course.
I saw someone on Instagram who moved 100 houseplants. And well, that's interesting. The more interesting part was 100 houseplants, 3 turtles, guinea pigs and hamsters, and 5 dogs. And this wasn't an emergency situation. She was moving across the country. So they had an RV. All the turtles were in cardboard boxes with holes in them for transport. The guinea pigs were also in like containers with holes, but they had to be small because they only had so much space. Because they had 5 dogs, and the 100 houseplants were all transported in the RV. So like, I'm imagining very tight space. But those are things that I never even thought about. Like, how would you transport a turtle or a tortoise? Cardboard box.
I've actually transported my turtles when I was younger. But yeah, that would be something I wouldn't.
Goldfish. Ever thought about how you transport fish? I think long ago I had betta fish, and when we went away on vacation, I would drive them to be pet fit, and I used press and seal. So they're tiny bowl, and then press and seal and some holes on the top, and that's how they were transported. And I've actually transported like larger goldfish, like we're talking this big, maybe 4 of them, 5 of them, in like one of those massive buckets.
Yeah.
They have portable aerators too. So if you have fish, it's a good idea to have a portable aerator, because if your power goes out, you might need batteries to keep your fish alive. And I cut a hole in the Rubbermaid bin so that I could put the hose for the aerator, because I just closed my pond. We had like 100 koi fish. And we put them all in Rubbermaid bins, and I had the portable aerator pumping air until they could get to Peterborough. So definitely portable aerator is something I would have if I had fish still. I did sell it because I don't need it anymore, but if you need to keep your fish alive in a power outage, you need air. Betas can breathe through their mouth though, right?
I have no idea. I don't know.
I think they can. I think you would get lucky with a beta because they can take air from the surface of the water, but most other fish can't.
You go, these are the, if you hang out with Sam and Camilla and I, these are the the rabbit holes that we go down.
Let's talk about robot uprising.
Yeah. Interesting side note. I actually met Camilla at Clicker Expo, which is a dog training conference. And then I met Sam in person for the first time last year, I think.
Yeah.
And then we all actually met
there, and I got
Seattle.
really confused.
Yeah. It was very cool. This third bullet here over during an emergency. Keep newspaper inside for hygiene purposes and feed your pet wet food in order to reduce the amount of water it might need. So kind of interesting to think about, but just along the lines of try to have your pet eat some different food so that if in an emergency you needed to do something like that, it's not the first time. So you don't use all the medications that Sam and Cam have listed like in the first 3 days. So you want to kind of prepare them for that. If you ordered to evacuate, try to take your pet with you. I really think that's what most of us would try to do. If you must leave your pets inside the house, do not tether or cage them. Leave a sign in the window and a note on the door. Oh, that brings me to another point. Indicating what animals are inside. Provide water and food in timed dispensers so that your dog, if you have one of those dogs, unlike mine, who would eat everything on site and then be sick, they do have timed dispensers so that the meals will come out, at timed increments. And this is the last one. I never thought of this. Leave the toilet seats up. So if they had to access water, your dog will drink out of the toilet if they can reach it. Yep. Even if they've never drank out of the toilet before, they would have the option to do that. Those last 3 bullets are things that I never thought about because I would never tether my dog out in a storm. But there's like those last 3 bullets are things I'd never ever really thought about. Newspaper for inside for hygiene purposes, I guess, cats could use it. I can guarantee that Logan would not pee on paper. If he had to pee in an emergency, he would just pee against a wall or on furniture if he had to, and that would be fine. I would be okay with that. Lots of food for thought, but there are 12 people still on, which is pretty awesome. You guys have comments, questions? What are some things? Let's just do it. Let's just kind of make this active. I like to pick on people. So I'm going to actually, if Haley wanted to unmute, Haley does not have dogs, but she has 4 cats. So we're just going to do a round robin. 3 things that if you don't already have at home, you're going to do or think about doing.
Me, I can start.
Sure. I'm going to start with you because I know you're there.
So yeah, like Tasha said, I have 4 cats. I have a van. So my plan is to throw them in the van. I have their food close to the front door. I have a first aid kit in my van, but I need to do litter and litter boxes. And water. I actually have a jug of water, but I think preparing like something to hold the water would be super helpful because I have the necessities like then and there. But then once the emergency kind of subsides and everything calms down, it's like, okay, well, the food can go on the floor. I can't really give them water just out of my hands the whole time.
And Haley's cats are carrier trained as well. So that's a really important skill, right? And that aside, any animal in an emergency is not going to be as compliant. I'm almost never use that word. Is not going to be as compliant as they are generally, right? So that's super handy. For those of you who haven't met Haley yet, Haley works with me in the county. All right. Emily, you just popped on the screen. Something you have already planned or something you're going to do?
Okay, so one thing we do have is like the sticker thing on the window with like how many, there's just one dog, but I ordered one of those a little while ago because I started to get anxious about it. So that's one thing we have. I think we have a separate crate for for the car. So I think I might gather up some of all the extra dog crap that we have in a more orderly, organized way and put it in that crate. Because we don't take them in the car that much. So like having it with the crate might be a good way to have it all in one place if we needed to go. And then the meds, I think, I haven't really thought about that at all. So that might be something just to consider having like a little first aid kit for.
Definitely have a first aid kit. When I traveled to the conference last year, which is where I kind of reunited with Sam and Camilla, our vet actually was like, here's all the things, right? Here's all the emergency. She just kind of filled them all for us to have it because you don't want to be, especially if you're traveling, you don't want to be having to go to like a vet in a foreign place or different place. The sticker that Emily's talking about, you can get, I've seen them at Home Hardwares. You can buy them online. And they're basically window decals with a picture of a cat, picture of a dog, and a picture of, I don't know, something. Pets in the house or please save my pets. They're usually red and white. And you can put the number of like 2 cats, 2 dogs, whatever it is. And you can put it on your windows so that fire and will see that. I only have it on one window. I'd probably like to have it on more than that. Okay, Molly.
So 3 things we're going to do or get?
Or already have. Something you already have and something you're going to do. 3 things.
Well, I definitely want to get a pet first aid kit. We don't have one of those. I haven't given much thought to this emergency preparedness, so I have a lot of stuff I need to do. I want to put together like a backpack with, I think it's a really good idea to just store like the super important documents in the backpack so that if we ever had to leave really quick, we could just grab that and they would already all be there. So I'm going to do that.
So probably a ladder.
Oh, maybe get ourselves a ladder for a bedroom in case we ever had to, evacuate out of our 2nd floor bedroom window. And figure out. I feel like if we found a big enough duffel bag, we could probably shove Murphy inside of it. So
it's a pretty big duffel bag.
Or those, do you guys have IKEA in Canada?
Oh yeah, those blue ones.
Those, yeah, but the only thing is, like, he could jump out if he was really scared because they don't zip on top or anything. So I'm going to be
That's
thinking
why those carrier things, they Velcro or they buckle.
Yeah, they're like $. So I looked at those things.
Canine sport sack.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Canine sport sack.
They
It's
like insized ones?
Yeah, they have ones for huge dogs. Where it's backpack that you like. I think their paw would come out and their head pops out the top, and you wear them like a backpack. But
yeah, it's a good point. Good idea. They're still, I mean, they're less expensive than those like emergency harness carrier things.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Catherine.
There's two. I don't know if it's me or the other Catherine. There's a Catherine.
The Catherine that's talking is super.
Cool. We've been meaning to put together a pet first aid kit or just fill out our first aid kit since we did our first aid course, and we haven't yet. So we should get around to doing that. What else? Ever since we did that, we can carry Blizzard. We've both tried it. Val can get her up on his shoulders, and she'll sit there. So that's something that we've practiced. And then just something to think about. We have all our documents. I don't think they're all in one place. Some are on the cloud, some are printed, but we do dog sit sometimes, and we always are provided with the information we need, but we would just have to make sure we had extra of everything we'd be taking just in case. So, and we do not have a travel crate either. So we don't have anything that we'd be able to use that would fit in the car because our crate's pretty big. So there's a few things there that we could think about.
There's some good canvas ones. They collapse down really small. That's definitely handy.
Yeah, we have the seatbelt tether for the car, and we have extra of that, but nothing to contain them.
Contain her. Cool. Thank you. Carmen.
Well, I wonder if they have, in planes when you have a water landing and they have those the slides that come out of the plane. I think that's what I need for the second floor, because while they do have, Phoebe's 140, Monty's 100 pounds, so it would be very difficult to get them out. So that's why I think a slide would be interesting. But I am curious about the pet harnesses. I think in a pinch I might be able to put one of them on my back. Ed can take Phoebe. But I do have a pet first aid kit, and I just ordered that off of Amazon, just like a tiny pet first aid kit that came with everything. One thing I was looking at is there's an app on my phone, and it's literally called Pet First Aid. It's like white with a pet. I don't know if you can see that, but it has literally everything that you would know what's normal: allergic reactions, bleeding, blood coercion, blood sugar emergencies, breathing problems, burns. And it kind of has a little bit about everything. And it also has how to prepare for emergencies and things. I have not had to use it, but it's pretty interesting, I think, in a pinch.
They have virtual too. They have virtual pet first aid training. That's worthwhile to try. Catherine and Haley were in the one that we did last year, and actually practicing bandaging, whether it's on a stuffed, you could practice it on your unicorn, your cow. She has an inflatable unicorn. I don't think it's a unicorn, it's a cow. It's a cow that we use for a decoy. Look at that training. And so if you get the inflatable slide, what you need to do is toss the cow down first, because the dogs will just go.
There we go.
So
problem solved.
But even practicing it on a decoy dog like that, because there are things like wrapping tails and wrapping ears. Theoretically, you think that is how it should go, but the floppy appendages are weird. Yeah, but that's if you can have it on your phone, but getting that kind of some of that hands-on, or they have guides that you can have too. That would be cool.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna buy some extra collars. I like the idea of having extra collars by the bedside, just in case we need to.
Extra leashes too.
Yep.
Thank you. Debbie.
I am going to dig out my canvas crate. I'm going to check out the list of meds that Camilla and Sam provided. Are they all dispensed by the vet?
Is the
Okay.
ointment cream that we don't know the name of, is that dispensed by the vet too? Yeah, okay.
Okay. The only Medcam Kenzie's ever had was by injection, so I'm assuming that you can get it by mouth.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to put a collar and a leash in my night table because I take Kenzie's off at night because her tags jingle and it disturbs me. So I leave it by the front door on the table. And if we ever had to kind of go out the other way or something happened that startled her and I had to grab her, I got nothing. So they're the first things I'm going to do, like right away.
Cool. Very cool. Thank
I
you.
have like a whole freaking list here of other things.
I'm just going to take a picture and then. Okay, cool. So Carmen, the other Catherine with a C.
It's Brittany right now.
Hi, Brittany.
But Catherine is here too, but it is me. We actually don't have much right now in terms of anything actually set up, but we have talked about it a lot after the fire because we are neighbors of Robin. So the fire was close to us as well. We have one of those stickers on the door that tells how many pets. And we've talked a lot about it. We're very lucky to have family literally on the same road as us. So I've talked a lot about if we have to throw the dogs in somebody's house and don't mind the water bottle squeaking with Fig right now. It is demon hour at our house. And we I want to do the backpack thing with extra leashes, collars, food, water, and medications. And then
you also dog sit sometimes, right? So you also have other dogs sometimes in the house.
Yes. And Chester, I like the whole muzzle training thing because Chester's muzzle trained, but Fig is not muzzle trained. And so I thought that was a good point. So we're going to work on muzzle training Fig because to us, we would be we would never need to do that with Fig. But that's a good point in an emergency for sure.
The other thing I would say, because I know you guys know the dog, because we know Chester can't be grabbed.
Yes.
Okay, he can be grabbed. You're going to get bit. Having him crate trained to be able to go in a crate, so somebody could potentially throw him into a crate and then grab that. And he's so tiny, it could be a tiny crate. That might be a training skill.
They're both crate trains. They both spent the first little bit of their sleeping lives in a crate, so they know to go into a crate, and Chester's crate is his little safe space when he's feeling anxious. So yes. And I also like the idea, we were saying, printing off a picture of each dog and then on the back having their personalities on there and birthdays and any allergies, or Chester noting that he is quite reactive, especially to certain paws and stuff. I like that idea too.
Thank you. And I think Robin.
For me, one of the big thoughts I'm taking away from this is the 15-minute drill versus the 1 hour drill, because when the fire happened, it wasn't quite a free situation, but in hindsight, I realized there's a lot more that we could have done in the meantime in terms of standby and getting things ready. So having those lists on hand. Doggies are busting in. just for me, it's definitely utilizing that time frame better. Is a thought I'm definitely taking away from this. Also, with us being first-time homeowners, is just having that emergency backpack for humans with all the important papers and all that is also a smart idea and a reminder. And it's also nice that you guys did this because after the
hey, look, so there are 2 burners in the house. One's a puppy, one's an adult.
yeah, because after the panic of the fire and the weeks that have passed since then, the urgency has diminished. But now it's like, oh wait, we still need to do this stuff. So.
Thank you. Training tips. Sam has pointers for cat travel.
Yeah, for those of you who do have cats, traveling with cats is a little bit different than with dogs. So it's worth it to put the time into it, even though you probably haven't really thought about this. But getting your cat used to hanging in the car and actually using the litter box in the car is a skill that has to be trained. Most cats, when you make a change, they're going to hold their bowels forever. So it doesn't hurt to just spend some time in the car, even if you can do it like once a week, just getting them to hang out there. Because I use my one cat for commercials. So what I usually do is put a litter box in a crate and just get them used to using that, so that if I bring the litter box in the crate into the car, it's something that looks more familiar and it can help them. Taking them on short rides regularly and desensitizing to the car. A lot of people only take their cats out of the house in the car when they're going to the vet. So a lot of cats do get car sick. Facing crates forward. A lot of people don't realize if you have that crate facing sideways, your cat is most likely going to puke. So you want to have that crate facing forward with the direction of motion. And then the last thing is, it is really worth leash training your cat. If you hang out in a hotel with your cat, chances are they're going to end up under the bed. So when I travel with my cat, the cat drags a leash. I do not let my cat be off leash because they always find like little hiding spots, right? So having that leash can help get them out of those hiding spots if need be. Yeah, those are the main ones.
Definitely things I didn't think of. Did it for a dog. Shake used to go to hotels and go under the bed, which is not like, that's just that disgusted me for different reasons. So I would sometimes have him leashed at night and tethered to me. He couldn't go under the bed, so I wasn't going to be able to get him out, right? If he didn't want to do that. Cool. I mean, other than Haley, does anybody else have cats? And now you can share your cat travel knowledge with other people. You can tell them.
Yeah, if you have them used to traveling in like little handbags too, that's super useful. So you've already done that. Huge life skill for cats.
Very cool. Any last questions from people? I did record this. I'll share it with you, Cam and Samantha as well. But Cam and Sam, it's like twisting me up. You're Sam and Cam. Cool. Well, thank you guys for staying so long. Give you lots to think about. A lot of you are in level up, though for some of you, if you had your level up sort of bonus applied to this, this is actually your last level up for the night. But I'll get in touch with you guys. What else was I going to say? I think that's it. If you have questions, like you guys are in the group, Facebook group, if you have questions or you're wanting to share what your prep is, or you're trying to practice carrying, I kind of want to see Blizzard up the neck. That's very cool. Logan is easily carried like this, but not so much like this. And I was thinking about that the other day. I can scoop him up like this, but I can only do this for so long. So a
You
carrier
also cannot climb a ladder if you're holding your dog.
Cannot climb a ladder. I live in a bungalow now. Okay. Before I would have had to climb a ladder out 9 stories. That would be a whole different thing for me. But yeah, you can't do this, and you can't run like this for very long, right? You can't. So if I was getting him into a car, it'd be one thing. But if I had to carry him, I would kind of have to practice that. And the last thing that I thought of, because I kind of jotted it down, doesn't happen very often. but practice with your dogs having them being handled by other people. Because in an emergency, that's often going to happen. So some of us have dogs where if you passed off a leash to somebody else, that would be a problem. Or if they needed to be restrained like this, like, for Logan, that's a problem. And I had done some practice with it, but I think Haley's going to help me practice giving my boy hugs, because some dogs find that very uncomfortable. So the more they practice that outside of an emergency, getting through doorways, jumping out windows, not that I want you to practice, but if you think you might have to take your dogs down a ladder, you might not want that to be the first time that you do that. Now, if you're in an apartment building, talking to people about why you're climbing out your window might be a different story. So maybe you can find somewhere else to practice that, but you don't want that to be the first time. I feel like if you just threw a ladder out your window in Philly, that would be a problem. But things to practice. Yes. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much, Cam. Thank you very, very much. I'll talk to both of you very soon, and I will see you, the rest of you, if not at work, next Thursday. Bye, everybody.